Back in 2012, when the Sonic.exe game was released, I only knew this specific Sonic as Sonic.exe, but little did people know some things would happen, and Sonic.exe would become a multitude of different characters that have an actual canon timeline, and there are even non-canon versions of Sonic.exe. This video is going to kind of explain what Sonic.exe is and who he is today as opposed to the one person that we knew him as, because Xenophanes is Sonic.exe, but 2011X is also Sonic.exe, but Lord X is also Sonic.exe. Xenophanes is not 2011X, but is still Sonic.exe. That doesn't make sense to you. I'm going to break it down for you. So, there is Xenophanes. I wanted to at least mention him because a lot of people might know him from Friday Night Funkin', but his actual origin isn't canon from Friday Night Funkin'. I know a lot of you guys want to jump onto that, but I don't believe the creator wanted Xenophanes to really even be involved much with Friday Night Funkin', and I could be wrong, but this is just what my sources tell me. Thank you, mailman. Xenophanes is, I'm going to say their name wrong, but forgive me, but Xenophanes is technically Sonic.exe, but isn't related to 2011X. See, Xenophanes has his own story and everything relating to him. However, the wiki stuff is down, and I don't know too much about Xenophanes himself. But I won't be delving too much into Xenophanes, and I'm going to be focusing on 2011X. Even though this is technically a canonical Sonic.exe, I would rather respect what the author wants, and maybe they'll release more information about the official Xenophanes in the future. That being said, let's jump into the meat and the potatoes of the video and talk about Sonic.exe 2011X. There is 2011X, there's 2011X Lord X alternate timeline, Sonic the Hedgehog timeline, which is 2017X, which is the guy we talked about recently, Lord Mortis, and Lord X, but EXE is created. Now, you must be confused because you're like, wait a minute, hold on. If these are all 2011X, how does any of this happen? And how is it canonical? To my understanding, some of this is canonical depending on who owns the variation of Sonic.exe and how it's adapted. Let's start with 2011X. 2011X was originally created by JC, but ownership was later transferred to Joe Doughboy. The change started to happen. It's really dependent on how 2011X goes about his future. So how does he become anyone else? We'll start off with 2011X. So 2011X just has a chance to just stay 2011X. Nothing changes, is just the canon timeline of 2011X. Like, that's it. Nothing changes, will just stay the same as the future goes on. To my understanding, this stuff is really just like things that could happen should 2011X choose to like take a different route or take a certain route, and it could branch off into alternate canon timelines. However, whether they exist in the same universe or same world is up for debate, at least in my opinion, and they do exist in different timelines. Like I said, there is a canon to this, so 2011X will stay the same as 2011X. However, there is the 2011X Lord X variant. Lord X grows more experience, creates the Guardians before Lord X is actually created. So what happens is 2011X creates the Guardians, and as he grows older, becomes Lord X. This represents his more like king-like feel, or rather, I mean, he is a lord, right? And that carries weight because he has servants. That's really the distinction point of how he becomes Lord X. Now, if 2017X gives into his delusion for Sonic the Hedgehog and becomes way more invested in Sonic the Hedgehog than what he already is, he becomes 2017X, which I did talk about 2017X originally, but I wasn't fully sure if 2011X was 2017X, but it actually is because it's stated on the wiki. That would mean that 2011X is given into his complete delusion and starts to believe that he is Sonic the Hedgehog. So to go along with this fact, 2017X will grab victims and put them inside of his friends' souls, make them play along with him in his delusion. And that's the point of 2017X. Next is Lord Mortis. Before the transition of 2011X and Lord X, if you take a drink every time I say X, you're just gonna pass out, okay? If Bendado exists in the same timeline of 2011, right as in the transition of so, he will become Lord Mortis. Now, technically, Lord Mortis is a variant of Lord X, but you wouldn't call 2017 Lord X. So technically, it's 2011 that becomes Lord Mortis because he doesn't have a chance to turn into Lord X because he isn't technically Lord X yet. Lord Mortis is a much weakened version of 2011X due to Bendado usurping him and taking away his power. He becomes more of a anti-hero and grows alongside the souls that he's captured and creates a group. This group is to stand against Bendado and get his powers back, essentially. Lord Mortis is likely the weakest EXE because he is defeated by Bendado and gets like, he no longer is the lord of that. I'm not gonna go super into like Bendado and who exactly Bendado is. He is pretty interesting in the sense that he is able to beat Sonic.EXE before he becomes Lord X. There is a question too, what happens when Lord X and Lord or when Bendado exist at the same time? And if they were to go head to head, this is just my opinion, but I think Lord X would take it. And while Bendado does have his own serpents and he's as strong as Lord X, he is limitless as well. The Guardians are just incredibly powerful, specifically Yokubo. Yokubo is maybe just as powerful as Lord X or somewhere around there. So when you have somebody who's just as powerful as Lord X and also more dead Bendado, it becomes kind of like, it's clear that Lord X also has gained a lot of wisdom and a lot of strength, but that's beside the point. Speaking of Lord X, we have the EXE. So, Lord X never creates the Guardians, but instead decides to play with creating life, in which case EXE is born, or otherwise known as Faker. EXE was made by what I believe is a follicle of Lord X's antimatter. He resembles Sonic quite a lot, and the Harbingers do exist. The Harbingers are creations of EXE, so Lord X creates EXE, EXE creates the Harbingers. Not only does EXE have the Harbingers, but also is damn near impossible to kill, and it took Lord X to completely put him in a different dimension or perform a specific ritual to take out Faker. Okay, so we understand that 2011 X can branch off into multiple different futures depending on what exists, how things go down, and all that jazz, right? The Friday Night Funkin' world is also canon to it of itself. However, it might also be canon because Joe Doughboy is getting directly involved with Sonic Legacy, and so is Raven. So Subterfuge in Lord X, it might also play into their story and, you know, how they grow or how they are portrayed. But there's really no way of knowing aside from what they confirm and what we know. What I do know is that these songs are absolute bangers. And I also know that with the canon story of Sonic.EXE in the Friday Night Funkin' canon stories of EXE, it can be pretty confusing because Xenophanes is completely different than how he is in Friday Night Funkin', but he's still a Sonic.EXE. In fact, where we see 2011X is actually in Sonic Legacy in Obituary. It should be so easy to get yourself like wrapped up and confused in this because it can be like honestly all over the place because it's like, how do these timelines technically come to be? But it is all what ifs, right? It's a what if. What if 2011X grows wiser? What if he gets Guardians? What if he meets Bendado? What if all this stuff, right? Okay, so to avoid confusion, I know I've been explaining this kind of weird, but let me explain this, okay? All right, so the current canons, right? There are 3 of them. There is X 2011 Sonic, right? This is the reboot version by Joe Doughboy, all right? Then we have Sonic 2017 X Sonic, quote unquote, and Xenophanes. These are the official timelines. However, to make this clear, the alternate timelines and creations is X from Sonic Legacy. Okay, I want to make sure that I make this like clear in the video. The distinction between X from Sonic Legacy and X 2011X is that one is from Friday Night Funkin' and that exists in its own canon, while 2011X Sonic is also its own canon. Okay, these two are not related. However, Subterfuge may be canon, right? This is why it gets confusing. See, the rest of this I've been explaining, it's pretty straightforward, right? The problem becomes Sonic, right, quote unquote, is in a Friday Night Funkin' mod, but that's his canon. But 2011X from Sonic Legacy isn't canon and it exists in his alternate timeline. But it also is canon. Does that make sense? No? Another alternate timeline is Lord X, but this is still a canon timeline, alright? EXE, Sonic Prototype. This is an alternate timeline where X creates his first living creation. Lord Mortis and Bandado are also alternate timelines, but they are canon. The discontinued one is Sonic.EXE 2011X from the game. See, the game is different. That is the one that was created by JC. That's kind of why it gets confusing. I'm not going to blame it solely on like Friday Night Funkin' because some things from the mod are canon, right? In Sonic Legacy, because Joe Doughboy is officially like working on it and has stated that this would be, and so has Raven stated that this would be the canon. The reason this gets confusing is because it could be appearing in Sonic Legacy and it not be canon, but is also canon at the same time, just not to the same story. Wanted to make a video on this talking about the different canons in Sonic.EXE because it is really interesting. Let's mention a few that aren't canon, but are still worth noting and I might make future videos about. Allfather mentioned. I have to play the footage of No More Souls to Play With. The Allfather. To my understanding that the Allfather either exists before Sonic.EXE does and he prevents the birth of 2011X and is 2011X, right? The Allfather is multiple different incarnations of Sonic.EXE, so he is Lord X, 2017X, and the way that he spreads and gets his power is by presenting himself as this, and the more that you spread around his creations, his clones, is the more powerful that he becomes. So if everybody talks about it, he becomes more powerful. This is a non-canon version, but one made by Jack Gore, who really did an amazing job on this EXE. I really like the design, and the FNF mod made from it is absolutely incredible. Sonic.OMT is really good in One Last Round. This is technically Sonic.EXE, but like just a different variant of it. Again, non-canon, but honestly, it could be canon to itself, right? What is canon? It just depends on how you view it. Sonic.OMT could be his own canon as well. Sonic.EYX is another really popular one that people really like that I thought would at least be worth noting. These are like creations. I would say that Sonic.EYX and Sonic.OMT have some of the best games made about them. There is a multiplayer game of Sonic.EXE, but aside from the Friday Night Funkin' mods, because those mods are absolutely incredible, especially Sonic Legacy for 2011X and all the other ones, these games are absolutely worth noting. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I just kind of wanted to casually like bring them up because I might do a video on them in the future, though I've already done 2 videos of Allfather. I don't think I fully explained him justice, so might come back and do a 3rd, baby. But it really just depends. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys want to see me talk about. I may not be 100% accurate, but I do like to talk about it. I do like to learn about it, and we can always revisit subjects if I feel the need to get it like more accurate, or basically just like cause a discussion on what you guys think. What do you want to learn more about? And I will happily do the research for you or get information. Quick shout out to Mailman. Link for his stuff will be down in the description below, who told me some things about Sonic.EXE and taught me about the timeline. But yeah, comment what you want me to talk about, subscribe, and I'll see you guys motherfuckers later.